Hey there.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Rugby Scoop Podcast. This is the Sunday Scoop. I'm joined by the infamous, the famous, the razzle-dazzle coach and former International Sevens, Blitzbokker Sevens player, Vickers Miranda. I'm joined by the statsman, the gardener, Hugh Griffin. I'm joined by the weatherman, all the way from Bloemfontein, Jade Craig. He hates it when I call him the weatherman, but nonetheless, we're going to give him a shout out. Vickers, how are things in Russia? How are you doing? How's the weekend been so far for you?
All good, brother. Just take it easy, laughing about some of the tweets that I'm saying from you guys. And Jade, why aren't you watching the Griffins and the Crickets, mate?
Nah, bro. I got paint that's drying on the wall to watch at the moment. I'm watching that currently. Sorry. My dad's gonna kill me. He's in part of the Greek was coaching setup. Sorry.
Fair enough. Jade, while we at it, how are you doing? How things over that side in Bloem?
I'm good. Can't complain. Quiet in Bloemfontein.
Yeah.
Paul was career hiding yesterday, so it was very, very quiet. You know, everybody's mourning in Bloemfontein, but yeah, it's good.
Yep. 100%. That's one of the topics I was going to bring up today. Seems like Paul Roos is doing a number on Grey College this past weekend. Very massive results. Apparently, they've got quite a good team this year. Paul Roos, not so great for Grey College, but I'm sure they'll bounce back. Knowing that there are very massive rivalries in the school setup. Hugh, Wi-Fi working well? You're not in what is it? You don't have things like load shedding where you are.
No load shedding here. So I'm coming to you guys not from my normal place this weekend. I'm coming to you from beautiful Devon, which is in the southwest of England. I'm on holiday at the moment, but I've managed to squeeze you guys in. I was at the beach this morning. If anybody's never been to the beach in Britain, it's a fascinating experience. You can feel the sun on your face and your neck, and you can feel that it's burning you. But you're stood there in your woolly jumper and your trousers and your walking shoes, absolutely freezing your nuts off. So I can highly recommend it if anybody ever does visit. But yeah, I'm here. I'm looking forward to getting stuck into it with you guys.
Sounds like a warm day in Cape Town. Cape Town water is quite similar. Yes, Vickers?
I thought you were coming from the garden. He's live from the garden.
I am in a very beautiful part of the world. I'll drop you some photos in the chat below.
Fantastic.
Everybody else get involved in the chat as well. We love to respond to the chats.
Fantastic. Without wasting any time, gentlemen, plenty to cover, obviously, as usual. Obviously, we start off with the news that are making headlines this weekend, and then we get into the nitty-gritty, the breakdown element of the show, where we look at what transpired yesterday between South Africa and Australia, and then we look at what transpired at the Garden in Eden Park between New Zealand and Argentina. And then we try and close it off by looking at what's going to happen in 2 weeks' time. Ellis Park is calling the biggest rivalry in world rugby, South Africa and the All Blacks. But anyway, news making headlines this week. Rumors are circling on the socials. Lucanio Am could be going to French top 14 or Japan. Oh my goodness, a big one. It's a big one that's circulating around currently, but nothing has been confirmed and official at this point in time. But obviously looking forward to that and as it develops throughout this week. But I mean, Vickers, just to ask you one question. Where do you think he would be well suited? France or Japan?
Oh yeah, so no, I missed your that point where he's going, but now that you've asked a question. No, I think if Lucanio would definitely be French rugby. I would think top 14 for him would probably be the most lovely. He would enjoy it. Unless obviously I think he's still in his late 20s. I think 29 or 30, but But I think if he would look at it, 34 years old, going to Japan. But for starters now, while he's still at a good state for his rugby career, I would go definitely France.
All right, fair enough. Also, news coming this afternoon. Faf de Klerk is going to miss the South African leg of the Rugby Championship, where South Africa plays the All Blacks, as I mentioned earlier. So he joins a list of a couple of players from the Springboks that are not going to participate in this Rugby Championship leg, where South Africa is hosting the All Blacks. So like Franco Master, Damian Willems. Okay, we all know about Lord Diaga. Also, news came through the past week about Lord Diaga. But something else, I mean, not on the rugby field. We saw Eben Etzebeth and Siyakolisi walk out the UFC champion, Drickus, this past weekend as well. We saw how excited they were with the win as well. Some South African sports seems to be doing well. We saw the cricket team winning in the West Indies. Now we've got Drickus in the UFC as a champion. We've got the World Cup champions. I'm sure Strumming Flower cannot wait to rub this on everyone's faces this coming week. Anyway, gentlemen, that's about it from the current news making headlines. Now let's jump into the rugby game that took place yesterday. We're going to start off with the Springboks and Australia, and then we're going to head to the All Blacks and Argentina game. Vickers, second game, B team, as everyone has been calling it this past week. I saw you said this is not a B team earlier in the week as well, but everyone's calling it a B team. Joe Schmidt didn't call it a B team. Rassie Erasmus didn't call it a B team, but the fans are calling it a B team. But nonetheless, B team aside, the Springboks did the number on the Wallabies 2 weekends in a row. They haven't won in Australia 2 games back to back since 1971. That's a massive, massive, massive victory for Rassie Erasmus. What are your thoughts with regards to the whole tour of South Africa? And obviously, what are the positives that you've seen from the Springboks from the past 2 weeks? And obviously, most importantly, yesterday's game.
Yeah, I think at the whole, what you just said about just the 2 weeks in Australia, I think it's very successful, especially looking at the fact that as a coach, you've literally played a first test, dominated, made 10 changes, and then played a second test, and you still got out with the bonus point. So I think if you look at in terms of that, you definitely say it was a successful tour for South Africa. Having a new sort of, okay, we call him new, but sort of new fly half in the mix as well. So he literally in 2 weekends now with and looked comfortable. So I think it's, yeah, you could really call it a successful tour. Players that I think settled quite nicely was Eric Lowe settled. I think we saw Sasha settling nicely. I think Fassi didn't have a bad game as well yesterday. I'd say so. When you look at overall in terms of that, and even the five from the Bulls, he also didn't do too badly yesterday. So I think if you look at all of that, I think you'd say look at the players that you brought in and that have given them a chance and given them some time. I think you would definitely be happy as a coach. But when I look at the game itself, I think South Africa took a while to get into the game. I think Australia, what we discussed last week about Australia keeping the ball, they came in with that kind of mentality. But again, another one pass crash ball, I wasn't impressed with until actually later stages of the second half when they started actually moving the ball with the tip passes, with pulling out the back. A lot of, I don't know, like for me as a coach, a lot of things don't make sense at times as for when I watch internationals, because when you tip, if you're known as a team that tips the ball to the next forward or pulls it out the back, and has stack runners all over the show, inside runners, it makes the defense coaches think quite a lot about how they would go about trying to stop you. So when you're doing the one pass crash ball, it makes it so much easier. It makes it so much easier. And I think they will have to really look at how they're going to do this kind of rugby against Argentina, because we've seen Argentina's line speed in that first test, that it was actually quite solid against New Zealand. And so, yeah, if you look at that, I'll definitely say they would need to change a few things. And cross kicks, I don't even know what maybe gave them the idea that they can start going for cross kicks quite a lot against South Africa, but they did. And two of them didn't come off. I think one was caught or just over the touchline. So it was I don't know, tactically not great at all. Scrum tactics, okay, like we know, the uncontested scrums, but as I tweeted, it actually left those boys that are coming off the bench, the bomb squad didn't do anything, so they didn't feel exhausted at all. So they were free to make those dominant hits, they were free to maul. So again, something to look at going forward.
Fair enough, Hugh.
Yeah, so Vuyo's point there about the cross kicks and things, it reminded me a lot of what Wales did against England in the Six Nations. So obviously England, I think Rian Lowe described England as South Africa, but with less conviction. So whatever South Africa are doing, you can guarantee England will be doing in 6 months' time. So what we saw was that England had this new rush defence, and the way to get over it, Gatlin said that he was the one who invented the blitz. I don't know if that's true, but that's what he said. And he said that he knew how to beat it, and the tactic that Wales used to beat the blitz was to do these crossfield kicks. So I wonder whether that's what the kind of thing that Australia were trying to do, was to try and to beat that line speed that South Africa have by kicking over it, getting round it. We know South Africa tend to defend quite narrowly. So there was space out there. Unfortunately, the kicks themselves were just extremely poorly executed for the most part, particularly the one that went straight to Mapimpi, which he should have finished. I know we'll probably talk about that in a minute. But if I may, to just ping a question back to Coach there. You mentioned that Elric Lowe has played very well, and I agree that he has. The Visa is supposed to be coming back. Jasper Visa is supposed to be coming back for the All Blacks test. And then you've got Quagga Smith is on the bench. 3 into 1 don't go. So does Elric Lowe, do you think, for you, keep his spot, or is Visa still ahead of him?
Look, I'm thinking based on, if I was the coach, I would definitely keep Elric Lowe there, because I know I've got a good solid backup in Quagga or Visa. But knowing what we've seen in the couple of years with Rassie is that he'll probably put Visa back on the mix and give him a go, because he knows who's younger. Elric Lowe is younger, and he'll probably going to get into that situation where when we need him the most, it's probably going to come a time where he's going to use him, especially the big games. I think for Visa, it will probably be a matter of now, he needs to just get a game where he can bash it out and see if he's still got that form that he's had in the English Premiership.
Fair enough. Jade, your view on the Springboks in Australia?
I think Rio hit the nail on the head in terms of the tactics and in terms of the way the game went. I think it was a very scrappy game because of the weather conditions as well. And overall, I know the coaching staff of the Boks won't be happy with the performance, but I mean, they've got maximum points in Australia, so it's job done for them. I mean, they turned to the rolling maul and scored 3 tries, and we just spoke about it a few weeks ago on the pod and saying that how difficult is it now, with the past 18 months or so to score from the rolling maul as teams put so much attention and, on the rolling maul defense. It just goes to show you where Australia is now and how weak they are up front in terms of the Boks actually really dominated them, with that rolling maul, wet weather conditions. I also felt at times in the first 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes, the Boks also looked a little bit rushed. They tried to rush the game plan instead of just settling and going back to their strengths. I mean, we spoke about it, they can play both ways. Once they settled into the game and once they, they got their foothold into the game, they got better. But Sasha looked a little bit rushed at times yesterday in the first 15 or so, but he did calm down. I think again had a good game as well. Interesting for me, Scooping guys. I mean, there was 2 or 3 experiments that Rassie tried yesterday. I mean, one was the Jan Hendrik Wessels at loose head. I went yesterday going against Aaron Alatua. It was not a bad tight head prop. I mean, he's got a lot of experience. He gave, what's this guy's name at Uka? Grobler. Yeah, Grobler. He gave Grobler a go as well. And then Salman Murat, they gave him another go in terms of his leadership. and captaincy, and obviously the scrum of Van der Berg. I don't think all of them really took the opportunity. I don't think the conditions allowed them to take the opportunity yesterday. I think Giannis was solid enough at loose set, but he also conceded, a penalty at set piece. I'm sure Dan Newman will be in his ear chatting to him about that. But I mean, he did start to give a few guys opportunities yesterday. But I don't think, between those four, one of them really took the grapple the chance, really, knocking on the door to replace a Bongi, or, to be on the bench, or Giannis really putting pressure on, the reserve, Lucid, or Morat really putting pressure now to come into the 23. So I think there'll be a little bit of disappointment, especially Morat, unfortunately, was concussed. But yeah, in terms of that experiments there, I think those guys really didn't take the opportunities yesterday against. All we know is a weakened Australian team who's really nowhere near the Boks class.
Yep, 100%. I want to bring in those elements now as well as we break the game down from yesterday. Obviously, Vuyo talks about a slow start from the Springbok point of view. I mean, one or two players, maybe the conditions were not suiting their style of play. And also maybe a shock to the system, right? In terms of last week, dry ground, everything is falling into the right places, everything is going according to plan. Fast forward 6-7 days later, big challenge on the conditions. It's raining cats and dogs in Perth. And then obviously the game plan needs to change, right? According to a Springbok point of view. And if you noticed how they probably wanted, like Vuyo said, they wanted to rush and play the similar style in that first 20 minutes, which did not come off correctly, did not come off well for them. But then once things kind of settled, you saw them go back or revert into that normal Springbok game plan that we saw maybe against the British and Irish Lions, where in between those two 10-meter channels, where they'll go for the aerial kicks, where Sasha was hanging back and kicking the up and unders to kind of gain some purchase, obviously, with the 50-50 aerial balls there. And then obviously reverting back into the maul as well. But I think for me, what changed that game, because it was it was close on the scoreboard, probably 1 or 2 points every single time South Africa scored, Australia would get a penalty, they kick for poles, it becomes a 5-3 or 6-8 in some regard. But as soon as, after that 20th minute, unfortunately, Morat went off with a concussion. But when Itzabeth came on, it kind of settled things down for the Springboks, to be honest, in terms of that maturity. They had like a nice, mature leader not to say Morat is not a good leader, but I could see the change in terms of the players and the confidence in going forward as soon as Itzabeth came on. And if you notice, as you said, Jade, a few of the young players maybe did not take their opportunities in this particular game. Maybe the conditions were not in their favor, but at the same time, you need to stand up, whether the conditions permit or not. But then as soon as the scrum element was also taken away from them, it's a test, right? And as soon as you have the more mature and experienced players, then things change for the Springboks. Got a penalty, go for touch. Let's get it. Let's make sure that we catch up. Well, Marks comes in, more senior as well, because if you had maybe a Grobler at hooker, maybe things don't go so well in those 50% into those 1%ers in the game as well. But I mean, Vickers, Sasha, last week we praised him. And then this week, do you think he handled himself well? We're just going to look at maybe a few individual players. Do you think he handled himself well in terms of his output in the conditions that were played in Perth on Saturday? Is it ticking the boxes? Can he play a tight game? Can he play a running game? I think the running game we already know, but when it comes to a tight contest, did it tick the boxes for you in this particular game?
Yeah, for me, absolutely, he did tick the boxes. I think that's definitely something that I would give him for, because last week he started. I think we all said in the space that first 10 minutes was not great from him. You could see that he was still nervous. But looking at this week, I think for me he really he did what as best as he could, and he didn't make any crucial errors. But also, guys, we have to remember his combination at 9, I think Monet had one of the worst games I've ever watched. At this, basically since he's been playing for the Lions until now, I think he was just not settled. I don't know. He was making the ball slower. His box kicking were not going far enough. So that also plays a factor, because now you're starting to trying to take responsibility outside of your partner, which is your 9. And I think that's why for me, Monet did not take his opportunity at all. And I can see after the Sharks game yesterday that Jaden will definitely be back on the squad for the New Zealand and Argentina test.
Yeah. Okay. And then, Jade, regarding the forward pack, looking at that seniority coming in, Eldrich Low has stood firm. Maybe made the one mistake I think when Australia kicked off, he knocked on the ball there. Him and Cheslin Colby were kind of on 50-50 in that situation. But yeah, looking at the forwards that stood out for you and probably will gain another chance. Do you think Aldrich Low now still gets that chance against the All Blacks?
Yeah, I think he took his opportunity. I think he's been apart. Maybe Peter Steph the toy has been better than him, but other than that, I think he's been one of the standout forwards. I really think he's taken opportunity. I think what he has what Jasper doesn't have is he's a better line-out option than Jasper Visser, because he's a little bit taller than Jasper Visser. And he's well suited to play in the trench lines and in the tram lines, and that's the way, sometimes the Boks look for width and try to attack that way. So I think he took his opportunity. Jasper will get a few more opportunities this season, but for me, Eric Low, he had a standout, or he took his opportunities against the Wallabies. Other than that, in the forwards, I think it was good to see Ruan Nukia get another game at lock. I think South Africa, we must be a little bit concerned in terms of the 5 locks. He really doesn't want to push Peter Steph the toy there. He preferred to have an out-and-out 5 lock. So with Frans van Boster being out and, Ergis Snyman, it's a guy that tends to get a few niggles or so. So it was actually interesting and actually encouraging for the Boks to see Nokia, get a good hit out yesterday in the Boks jersey. Whether he took his opportunity, I don't know. I don't think he really stamped his authority down, but I mean, he got another go, and Rassie saw what he is and what he's all about. Then the others, I mean, Marks and Bongi, they did set on to be there. Your props are sorted out. So in terms of your pack, the Boks pack is there. I mean, it was good to see guys is coming off the bench, like Van Staden, starting. We know that if something happens to Sia, he can slot into 6 easily. Other guys from the bench, getting a good run in this team. So, but no, look, the Boks pack is always going to be powerful. For me, I think now at the moment, Rassie knows who's his team is going to play against the All Blacks. He knows it already. He can mention it today. He can name it today. He'll be so confident to name it today because he knows it already. But the other guys that, like you mentioned, that's on the fringe, just really didn't stand out and take the opportunity. But let's see, maybe they'll get another opportunity against Argentina at home, and we can judge him from there.
Yeah, fair enough. Hugh, I'm going to bring you in here. There's a controversial topic making its rounds on the socials regarding the scrum element and the HIA situation. But I mean, looking at that as a possible strategy from some coaches or some teams, where you take away the powerful box scrum as they put in their bomb squad to kind of nullify them in air quotes and nullification. Do you think some teams or coaches could copy that and use it as a strategy going forward? But I heard Vuyo earlier say, yeah, they try to nullify the box scrum, but those players now that come on as the bomb squad are still fresh enough to make those impactful tackles. They're fresh enough to maul you to maul you all day long. But I mean, looking at that as a trick, as a plan, as a strategy for coaches going forward, because coaches, everyone wants to think out the box in terms of how do you nullify the Springbok bomb squad, and basically coming up with ways you can't match them physically, So what are ways that coaches can come up with strategies to nullify this? But do you think this could be a potential way of coaches going forward to look into?
Of faking an HIA, do you mean?
I didn't use the word fake. I said, yeah, if there's an HIA situation and now we can't scrum because of an HIA situation.
Well, the only way that their coach could exploit that is if they faked it, or if they told people to go out onto the pitch and headbutt people in the hip or something, or in the knee. No, I don't think so. So I remember reading an interview with Gatland again, who gets his second mention of the pod. He says that in the World Cup semi-final in 2011 against France, he considered faking an injury to a prop so that the scrums went uncontested, because he felt that Wales would get an advantage from doing that. And he didn't do it because he felt that that's not how he wanted to do his rugby. That's not how he wanted to do business. Now, a few years later, ironically, Wales hosted Georgia at home, and we got an injury to the prop, and Georgia were on top of the scrum at the time and had a scrum to potentially win the game, or at least draw the game. And Welsh prop went off injured, and the prop who had already been on and come off was stretching off to come back on as an injury replacement. And then it was very rapidly told, no, you're injured, you can't go back on, even though he was stood by the sideline. So is there a bit of dark arts there? Yes. But I think if you're in a game and you're getting hosed in the scrum, then I can see a coach going, right, okay, let's get us out of this situation. But I think a premeditated plan during the week, I just don't think that's how an elite sports person would want to go about doing things. I would be surprised, for like professional scrum coach to be told by his boss, the head coach, or an international level prop to be told, listen, halfway through the game, we want you to fake being injured so that you get taken off. I can't imagine that's how people want to do business. So it seems unlikely to me, but I can see in a moment, if you're really struggling and you think that, no, God, I'm willing to do anything to get us out of this situation, then maybe. But premeditated, I think it's unlikely.
Fair enough. Vickers?
Yeah, so I think, Hugh, you're right when you say it wouldn't be premeditated, but you would be surprised the kind of conversations that do go on in those coaches' office in terms of such things. But the thing is, for me, it's a loophole in the system, right? I don't have a problem with loopholes that you can use to your advantage. It's a money sport. We all know it's a money sport. The more games you win, the more sponsorship you get, the more money you get, the more supporters you get. So if coaches will use that to their advantage so that they can obviously bring more money into their team and whatever, it can happen. It is possible that it can happen, because you must also remember, as coaches, this is your bread and butter. So if you're not gonna win certain games, then you will lose your job. And then when you lose your job, someone else is going to take over, and you're going to have to try and find another job to feed your family. So it also goes down to the same thing, is that how can you manipulate when you know that you don't have that kind of system? How can you manipulate it towards your advantage? So I'm not saying that it's something that's normal, but I'm just saying that it is possible that it can happen. But I'm just thinking in terms of bending the rules a little bit. If a player goes out on HIA when we need him to be back on the field as ASAP, it shouldn't be a matter of HIA, sit down for 10 minutes and then come back in the last, after your 15 minutes. It should be HIA, back on the field immediately, because you are being needed for the sport to continue.
Okay, I hear you. Vickers, still sticking with you. There's a big one. Tactical detail, skill, individual skill, ability. So coming from a coaching background, or from a former player, first of all, international player, traveled the world, you've seen many things. Then you went into coaching, you've done many things, you've been around the globe, you've coached many players. And then I've been in a few camps or coaching situations or coaching camps where teams or coaches are more focused on the structure of the team and basically looking at the holistic part of the team. And then where there's limited resources on one-on-one detail and working with those players, and then maybe sitting down, spend half an hour talking about the technical detail that a player needs to have in order for him to achieve X, for example. And looking at yesterday, obviously, Mapimpi is the topic for this particular conversation. And now looking at how he has played since he made his debut for Border, moving from Border to Kings, moving from Kings to Cheetahs, moving from Cheetahs to the Sharks, right? He's bounced from many coaches and many clubs and different coaching styles. So now watching him play for all these teams, there tends to be a certain habit. And obviously those habits die hard if they are not coached out of a player. And if they are not coached out of a player, the player keeps doing the same thing over and over again because nobody says, hey, listen, how's about we try X or how's about we try Y, right? And looking at Mapimpi, I think one of the centers, because it wasn't Lolosio, one of the centers from Australia tried to cross kick. And with that cross kick, he overcooked it. Mapimpi was in a very good and strong position. Good catch, first of all, which is also a skill in those conditions. He runs, there's nobody in front of him. I'm listening to Brian Abana in the comms, and he couldn't believe that a try was not scored in that situation. Abana, we know what his record is for the Springboks. For him and me watching that game and thinking to myself, this should be a try 10 times out of 10. This is an opportunity where there's nobody in front of you. The defense is coming literally at full speed. It's cross-covered defense. There's basic elements that are required for a winger things to do in order for him to go across the line. But from your perspective, when you see that movement, when you see that whole picture, what comes to mind first? And obviously, how does one, as a coach now, teach a player to be better in those situations?
Yeah, so so you wouldn't get time to work on such instances, but what you do is have one-on-one individual clips to advise players on certain situations that they've had on the field. I think in terms of Mapimps, this is the first time for him in the Springbok jersey. So a guy like probably Stick would probably cut out the clip and say, listen, let's work on ideas here, what happened and what could we do better next time. For me, when I look at it, just in terms of any rugby player, when someone is coming at you as a defender at your 90-degree angle, there's no way you can step that player because he is not in front of you. He is at a 90-degree, which means he's coming straight for you. So you got two options. The first option would be to stop, let him pass, then continue running. That's the first option. Second option would be, if it's wet, obviously, like it was on Saturday, is to, as he's approaching, maybe about 5 meters in, put a grabber through and go. Put a grabber through, and then he obviously won't make the tackle, commit to the tackle. And then obviously another option is to try did what Mapimps did and try like bump it. But it's very difficult in terms of just individual skills being worked on. You have to work on individual skills that you individual skills that come up in your within your games. For a Springbok level, I think Hugh mentioned this in his tweet. At international level, it's very difficult because of the short amount of time. But at club level, as a player, we normally encourage players to work on what you need, right? Work on what you need as a player because we can't cover everything. And it's impossible, guys, to cover everything on coaching. But what players do have an opportunity to do is cover a lot of their individual shortfalls where they can actually enhance their game. Look at the grabber my Pimps kicked for Fassi to score. He would have never kicked that in 3 years ago or even 2 years ago. That grabber kick would have gone haywire. It would have gone off the other way. But because you can see that he's been working on such skills and just putting those small grabbers through because it's required at that level, now it worked. So yeah, there are some skills that you work on. There's some skills that you. I think in this case, it's a more of making the players awareness on certain situations they face on the field.
Jade, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, look,
Or
guys,
wait, or should I say you don't know rugby?
I don't know. You know, some guys don't get so really trolls, but she's like you said, is the basic elements in terms of your basic skill sets. I mean, there's options what you do. Like if a player's coming at 90 degree, there's no way you're gonna bump him. But there's certain options, there's certain situations that you do in terms of that cross cover defense. And you as a winger also, you've been doing it for a long time as well. So I hope, he gets the opportunity again when we see him again and the ball is, in the right hand again. I mean, he's not the first winger I've seen it. I mean, we've seen Rico Ione in the final. And I mean, he did it against England earlier this year as well, where it's a weakness, that's eventually might just cost him his All Black place at centre again because of there's the ball positioning in his hand. So, yeah, for me, I really hope, he learns from this, he'll see it as a try butchered. He'll know it's a try butchered. He know he had to finish there. I mean, when he got the ball, I said try, and then obviously he lost it on the line. But yeah, I mean, it's something that he'll pick himself up with from. I'm pretty much sure Stick, who is the skills coach, will be working with him again, just reminding him. And Stick will also be knowing and trusting him because, I mean, he knows that my Pimps, is not the kind of player, his skill set is up there. So it might have just been a once-off thing in the big game. But yeah, let's see, how he bounces back from this.
Bounce being the operative word, Vickers.
Look, I hear a lot of people talk about ball in the wrong hand, ball in the right hand. There is no such called in rugby. That's ball in the right hand, ball in the wrong hand. So if the situations that you do shift the ball in terms of what's happening, I teach my players not to go ball on the outside once they're inside the 5 meter. The reason being is because once you're inside the 5 meter, there is no way of recovery if that player is coming off from the right angle. So you can use the ball to help you bump off the player coming to you. You can use it to your advantage. Whereas if the ball is on the outside, even if you will hand off the player that's coming to you, what's going to happen is that your body's momentum is going to swing towards the outside, unless you are trying to do an offload. Okay? But I normally teach players to hold the ball on the outside away from the defender if they're inside sort of towards the 4 meter, 5 meter, because then that offers you a quick ball, for example, on attack, because your ball placement will be quicker. And then it also offers you the offload if it is an opportunity for offload. But in that case, if you are running on the touchline, whether the ball is on the inside or not, it doesn't matter. You are going to go out.
Oh, you heard it all, yeah. Waxing lyrical. Jade.
No, I understand completely what you said, and I agree with him in certain aspects. But I mean, for you, there's another skill set that came in the game in the past 2 years or so, and they call it the rugby league finish. We give the winger the opportunity, in tight situations to score a try, most probably diving in a scenario with his feet in the sky and planting the ball down. And we've seen multiple wingers do this now. It's something they do practice. I mean, we've seen it coming from rugby league, coming over to Union. We see Cheslin Colby perfecting it. We've seen how many guys overseas in New Zealand perfecting it. So it's also something if a ball's in the wrong hand also, it takes away that aspect on the 5 meter line when you're trying to finish, you won't be able to get that dive in. But it's all aspects, it's all different scenarios. I think it's more in terms of, let's say, what you're comfortable with as a rugby player. And like Vuyo said, there's no such thing as ball in the wrong hand, but what you're comfortable with as a rugby player, and you back your skill set and how comfortable you are.
Oh, I'll tell you who's not comfortable. Joe Schmidt. Hugh, looking at Australia currently, looking at what's happened, what they're planning next year, the Lions are coming through. Looking at their game plan this past 2 weekends, right? They get penalties. Their only option for the first 65 minutes was to go for poles, and they converted. How many was it? I think it was 4 out of 5 or 3 out of 4. One of those numbers. Just their mental state in terms of the confidence, I think, was knocked out from last week. Going into this game, they're playing a team that made 10 changes, but the only time they wanted to go for touch was after the 65th minute. And within that, they also lost their own line out twice in those circumstances. But looking at everything that's transpired in the past 2 weeks for Australian rugby, I mean, where to now when they're facing Argentina in 2 weeks? What's the next step for them? Because they're traveling all the way to Argentina. But then at the same time, Argentina, we know, when they're playing at home, they're not really a serious team. But where to now for Joe Schmidt?
Very difficult, very difficult. And as you say, I think their confidence is going to be low because you look at it from an attack point of view. I was looking at the stats, and there's for this game, it's difficult to judge the stats. For one reason, the number of changes the Boks make, so it's not an apples for apples comparison. But also because of the weather, kind of goes out the window a little bit. One of the two stats that stuck out to me was that 55% of Australia's ball was between the halfway line and the box 22, but only 16% of their ball was actually in the box 22. So that's a team that's got opportunities to make inroads in attack, but failed to do so. And if you look at it, no tries this week, one try last week, and the one try they scored last week was when the Boks were down to 13. So you're looking at it on the try score sheet of the two games, it says 9-1. It says 9-1. But that could very easily be that one could have not been there if the Boks didn't pick up those yellow cards. And the Boks left how many tries out there, do we think, of the two games? 4 or 5? 4 or 5? So you're looking at 13-0 in another not too distant universe. That's going to be very, very confidence sapping for them. Just completely not really firing a shot in attack across the two tests. And I was looking at where the carries were coming from. The other stat that stuck out to me was the number of carries by their backs. So can you guys still hear me if I'm just switching screen?
Yeah. Louder.
Okay, so I'm just going to load up the carries. So obviously you're thinking, wet conditions, poor conditions. In the Northern Hemisphere, at least, we would say that this is going to be a forwards game. The backs aren't going to see the ball. But obviously, Australia had a game plan, and when the rain came down, they didn't change it. They said, no, we're going to stick to this game plan. So if I look at the carries in the forwards, in the type 5, it's ones and twos. Angus Bella's got 6, but apart from that, you got Salakaya Loto got 7. Everybody else than that is not much above that. Whereas I look at the backs, you got Wright 6, Kellaway 6, Ikitau 3, Paisami 6, Korobete 6. I think he's down for 8 on Rugby Pass. Lolesio 6, Nick White 8 here, according to Super Rugby website. According to Rugby Pass again, Nick White got 11 carries. The top carrier was Wilson, according to 9, but that's not that many. So clearly they had a game plan to use the backs, and it wasn't the game for it. And this is this a kind of a Joe Schmidt control freak thing? We know he likes to unlock teams with chess moves. They call him the chess grandmaster. It's not working for whatever reason. And the one carrier who I haven't mentioned there, who you would normally expect me to mention, would be Rob Valentini. 4 carries in the whole game. And if you're looking at uncontested scrums, he would have had the opportunity to do those carries. And for whatever reason, they decided not to go that way. For me, I don't know if other people agree, Valentini, I would probably think of as Australia's best carrier. So for him to get, 4 carries, let me see here, 3 meters. That to me, that's not a bad player. That's a player who's not being used. So interesting tactics there from the Wallabies. I think Joe Schmidt might need a bit of a rethink here. He might need to swallow his pride a little bit.
Wait a minute. Did I hear you correctly? Did you say 4 carries and 3 meters?
That is what the Super Rugby website is saying.
4 carries and 3 meters for Valentini.
For a number 8 as well, because you've got to imagine number 8s are coming off the back of scrums and they're fielding kickoffs. They've got opportunities to make meters that other players don't.
I am beyond shocked. 4 carries and 3 for a player of his size. Okay, Vickers, jump in there.
It's mostly because he was running at the fresh bomb squad. But anyway, no, Scoop. Actually, when Hugh was just mentioning this, I think this is an interesting conversation. When Hugh was mentioning this, the stats and everything, Valentino, why can't he move to fly half when it's non-consistent scrums? And he be the first ball carrier? That's my first instance. That's my first question, is that why can't he? Because it's non-contested scrums. You have to have 8 in the scrum. So it doesn't matter which 8 you have. So you take the fly half, move him to 8, take the 9, take the 8th man, move him to first receiver, and is running at Sasha or Mani Lubok. So it's okay. That should happen.
Tony Brown needs to take notes. I hope Tony Brown's listening to this.
And then secondly, also on Corabetti, most of his ball carries, Corabetti was first receiver from a set piece. Yeah, that's it.
All right, fair enough. Jade, I was going to bring you in there as well, and you share your views regarding this particular Joe Schmidt coaching element, because I think I shared some player names, right? In terms of looking at what Dave Rennie had in 2022, where Australia lost by 3 points in Dublin, they lost by 1 point in Paris under Dave Rennie. And then Joe Schmidt pretty much has roughly the core group. Maybe 3 or 4 players are injured. That makes a huge difference, understandably. But the core group is still there, right? The engine room is still there, roughly. But because they're getting 2 different styles of play, Dave Rennie had his own style of play, which I think gave Australia a bit of a sniff, because they weren't losing by much. They weren't losing by 3 or 4 scores. Joe Schmidt comes in, he's introducing his own style of play, as you put it, almost like moving chess pieces around. And you find that now the back line is carrying more than the forward pack. But your thoughts, just overall thoughts regarding Joe Schmidt, then we jump onto the All Blacks.
Okay, listen, when you sent me that yesterday, Scoop, or actually looking at, thought about it, and I thought, didn't break it down and look at the space Australia were in when David Rennie took over. They came from a 2019 World Cup loss in the quarterfinals, came through, COVID came, and they had their own domestic competition for a year or two, where they had Super Rugby Australia. Now, teams there in Australia, like the Reds won it, and then I think the Brumbies could have won it. I'm not too sure. I think the Brumbies won the second one. But you had multiple winners, and people in Australia had that feel-good feeling of winning. You get what I'm saying, winning. Then they went back to Super Rugby Pacific, and they first had that Trans-Tasman competition, but then these teams got mauled and hidings every week. So look at what Dave Rennie had to build with in terms of team morale, spirit, all of that aspects. He had quite a bit, because in the first 2 years that Dave Rennie took charge, he beat New Zealand a few times as well. So I really think they were in a different mindset, when Rennie was there, was Schmidt was there. Schmidt came in now, and Australia are really in, excuse the pun, but they're in shit. They've got a lot of problems. They've got a lot of crap to sort out, on and off the field, in terms of getting the best players secured, in terms of getting, players overseas to come back. I just heard a podcast on Rugby Law where the overseas players are stating that they're not going to come back because they get little preparation. They'll be made scapegoats when things go wrong. So there's a whole lot of rubbish going on in Australian rugby that Phil Waugh and Daniel Herbert needs to sort out. It's going to take a while to sort that out. it's difficult now to go and point fingers at Joe Schmidt after 5 games in charge, where we stating that you made simple things like the backs is carrying more than the forwards. That's something he can change, and tweak as he goes to Argentina, where it's not going to be easy for him. Because that's something he can change. But in terms of this overall performance, in terms of his squad depth, in terms of his scrummaging, in terms of his line-out work, ball defense, those stuffs he can work on. But certain players are going to have to get 5 to 10 to 20 tests in this cycle, in this team, before they're going to get better at it. Before you're actually going to see improvement. Whether he's going to have time, I don't know. Whether he might just be embarrassed by the British Lions coming there next year, beating them 3-0 and just, saving his name and resigning there. He might do that as well. But I really hope, they can get some continuity as a country, can get some, can keep on improving. Because I thought of the Welsh and the Georgia tests, okay, they improved, but they really went backwards over those past 2 tests. And for me, I still pose this question. We don't need to answer it now. But who in this Australian team would make the All Black team or the Boks team? I can't think of one. Rob Valentini was the only one I could think of, but his rugby was went backwards this past 2 weeks. So that is what we're sitting with Australian rugby.
Nick
White, where and how and who? I don't think he would. I honestly don't think he would. I mean, he wouldn't be allowed near the Boks team. They would leave him. They wouldn't put him on the bus. They wouldn't share a beer with him in any way. But that's where they are now, currently, and where Australian rugby is now. So for them to get through this whole thing, to them to get out of this mess, it's not going to be a quick fix. The best that they can do is to continue to build with this. And remember, when they go into the year away, they've got the Grand Slam tour. So they play the home nations. And that's actually a big tour. There's a lot of pressure on them. So yeah, let's see. I'm not sure. I don't just fancy Australia beating Argentina in Argentina. I think Argentina might just win both. They're in trouble, Scoop. But we need to see improvement and we need to see them get better. But at the moment, I think they went backwards after the Welsh and Georgia test.
Yeah. Scrumming Flower, I was joking about Nick White. He had a nice little mustache there against the Boks. So, yeah, the referee had a nice, good lip at him as well, which was pretty good to see. But, Jade, sticking with you, All Black game, you said...
Wait, Scoop. Last thing on Springbok game. Question from the audience, question from the comments. Scoop, I need you to put your referee's hat on now. The try that Malcolm Marx scored...
Wait.
Where he slipped over...
Sorry, say that again.
The try that Malcolm Marx scored where he slipped over at the back of the maul, and he put his knee on the ground. Now, so what's the rule there? Is he unbound from the maul then? Because he was still holding on with his hand, but then I'm not sure, is the hand enough or does it need to be with the shoulder? And if he's put his knee on the ground, is he no longer part of that maul? What's the rule there?
So basically, from that situation, he is unbound. And then the referee should have called it then because he comes back up and he rejoins again. So your shoulders need to be bound. So like if you look at the guys that are in front of him, shoulders are together, the bodies are nice and tight. Unfortunately, he slips. But at the end of the day, we're all playing in the same conditions. So with that call, yes, he could have called a scrum to Australia there because it's an accident. It's not intentional because usually sometimes when you see mauls break out with the guy at the back with the ball and you see them, the two, maybe let's say when the maul breaks out, 2 players in front of the ball carrier and they go make contact with an opponent who's defending. 10 times out of 10, it's called an obstruction. So with Marx pulling away with his arm and detaching from the maul, he's no longer part of that maul. But now when he runs back into it, then the obstruction element comes in. The obstruction decision comes in. So they could have called, but sometimes these things are seen, sometimes they're not seen. I think Luke Pierce also posted that last week when one of the fans asked him a question about an incident that took place in the game. Sometimes these things, are visible and the officials will call them. Sometimes, they're not visible at that particular time and officials won't call them and you play on. So, sometimes it falls in your lap, sometimes it doesn't fall in your lap. So that's the answer to that. He does detach. As you detach, you cannot come back onto that mall again, because that mall is already moving forward at 110 kilometers an hour as well. But yeah, if that's the only question.
That's the only question from the
Okay.
audience.
No, cool. Fair enough. Jade, looking at the All Blacks personally, I mean, it's a 42-10 drubbing from my side. Yes, good response from the All Blacks, but we saw the similar thing under Ian Foster. Lose one game, respond next week. Lose one game, respond next week. When are we ever going to see consistency within this All Black setup? In the past, 3 to 4 years, they seem to be on and off. When are we ever going to see consistency? They're going into South Africa. We might as well get into that conversation now as well. Going into South Africa, playing at Ellis Park, Highveld. They won last year, but at the back of a lot of pressure for the coach, a lot of pressure on the players, almost similar to what had happened last week. But when are we going to see consistency?
Nah, not anytime soon, Scoop. I think we have to be patient with this All Black team. They rebuilding, and it's going to take them a year, 2 years, might even take them 3 years, before they actually be consistent. They're always going to be surprised and always going to be have that odd game where, they don't perform. Like I said, yes, last week, they in the past, they could have a bad performance against Argentina like that, but still scrape through with a victory, but not this All Black team. I think yesterday they did okay. They first half, they were good in the conditions as well. I mean, the conditions were terrible, but they really came out firing. I mean, they made it a little more physical, made a lot of close contact meters. Ori Savia, it is Tupovai, I really rumbled up front, the mighty Williams and all. But then now the question is this papering over the cracks? What happens when they come to the Boks? Because that's really when I want to see how far they are and where they are with with Razor. I think Dane McKenzie had his best game at 10 for the All Blacks yesterday. I think he was absolutely brilliant. But let's see how he does next week, or in 2 weeks' time against the Boks, or a different gravy, to what Argentina do. So for me, in terms of you asking when are they going to be consistent, I think they're still imbalanced. I think they still need to sort that balance out. I still think Razor doesn't know his best loose trio. Razor doesn't know who's his best wingers. He still doesn't know. There's a lot of questions he has in terms of selection. I think, like you also mentioned, the Leo McDonald attacking playbook compared to Tony Brown, there's a big difference in it, where Tony Brown's playbook looks better, more sorted for the All Blacks. But Leo McDonald's playbook is more technical, structured, and it's not working at the moment. It's not working. I think there's gaps between what he's trying to do on with attacking and interpretation of what they're doing there, and the way David McKenzie even received the ball laterally as well. So there's a little bit of gaps in terms of the coaching and the players to getting the message through as well. It's going to take some time. I really think, All Black supporters have to be patient this year. You're not going to fix this whole situation. Like I said last week, I mean, you lost 400 caps in Vitalik, Whitelock and Smith and Mwanga. That's the core and the spine of the team. How long is it going to take before you get, players of those caliber? You're not going to replace it overnight. I always say that take even Etzebeth, the step to Toy, maybe the Allender and another guy, a backline, take them out to the Boks team. They'll also struggle, to adjust, because that's big caps, that's world-class players. You might not replace them for this generation. It might take another 10 years to get a similar player, towards in Aaron Smith. But the concerning thing of the All Blacks is they've always got this bounce back aspect of it. We didn't play well this week, now we bounce back. Questions regarding TJ Perenara. Now, yesterday I had a good game. Okay, let's speak TJ Perenara again. Instead of making the brave calls, instead of making the brave calls, okay, Teach, you had your time. Let's give Ratimer Noah Hotham and Cam Roygard when he gets back. Let's look at this three. Sam Kane, I mean, what does he offer from the bench? Because the bench made no impact yesterday. I mean, Sam Kane, for me, and Vuyo will also agree with this, he's either a guy you start him or you don't play him in the 23, because he's not actually an impact player from the bench, regardless of how good he was. Big imbalance with the loose trio. I think Ori stepped up yesterday, but I looked at the try scoop that Will Jordan scored, the second one, where the scrum went forward. And I'm thinking to myself, Ori, why picking up the scrum? You need to channel it for 3 more seconds. You get the advantage, penalty advantage, and then you pick up and go. But you picked up, okay, they did score, they did do well there, but they could have had a knock on there, and lost out points, in that situation. So it's just some simple things like that with RD at 8. Their lineouts yesterday, they still look a little bit rushed. At lineout time. It's inexcusable if you have a lineout on your opponent's 5-meter line and you have attacking lineout, you get an overthrow or to not get your jumper at the back. For me, those things they need to iron out if they're going to play the Boks and they're going to be competitive against the Boks. At the moment, I see the really different in strength between these two teams at the moment. I think the Boks is the first time, that you're really going to the stage where the Boks is heavy favorites for the game. And rightfully so. So, yeah, in terms of Razor, he's got a lot of pressure, a lot of former players, a lot of guys backing him or talking a lot, talking behind the scenes, stating, what they should and what they should not do. A lot of guys on social media, slating the team. But then you're also going to have to be patient with these guys also, and just realize that, okay, these guys are New Zealanders. This is not Foster's guys, not Razor's guys, it's the All Black guys that's been selected. Because at the moment, there's this feeling that, Razor's still playing with Foster players. And that's actually, causing a big dark cloud in New Zealand rugby where they're stating, why is Razor still playing with these in Foster, Steve Hansen players? Where's his players? So let's see what he do over 18 months, the players that he does bring in his plans. And that's when we'll see consistency.
Sorry, Scoop, to just jump in with Jade. You mentioned there about the bench in the second half. Do you think that was a case of the game is won, there's nothing to play for anymore, let's just, keep it clean and see out the victory? Or was that just a case of the bench didn't offer as much of a step? Because if I look at your ideal Springbok bench, your Irish bench, even your French bench, they tend to take it up a level, whereas that didn't seem to happen.
It didn't happen at all, but it started was when you took off your pivot in Damien McKenzie at fly-off. I'm very against the idea of taking off your fly-off during a game, because you see what happened yesterday. Bowden Barrett is a brilliant player when he comes off from the bench. He comes on to fullback or fly-off, but yeah, you took off Damien McKenzie yesterday. And that was always going to be the plan, to give Will Jordan time at 15 and to see what Bowden does, at 10. But I think that was also caused a big, a momentum loss for them where they took off Damien McKenzie for Bowden Barrett. He didn't adjust to that game the way D-Mac ran yesterday. I think D-Mac had the game of his life yesterday. He should have just kept him on and, and see how he ran with Will Jordan. That would have been, I think they would have scored a few more tries. But yeah, in terms of what you're looking at from the bench, I mean, if you're looking at your Lucy from the bench, you want a big ball strong, ball carrying, quick Lucy. I mean, Sam Kane is not that. Josh Lourdes, he's still, jury's still out whether he's a All Black player. Asafa Moore came on yesterday, he did well, but I mean, it's those kinds of selections that's on the bench he needs to get right. He needs to get his balance right in terms of his starting team and his bench, and then we'll see it. But yeah, I think the biggest thing yesterday was the Bowden Barrett, Damien McKenzie swap that actually hurt him in the second half.
Yeah, and Hugh, what did you think of the game yourself from your analysis of the All Blacks? And I see that your flanker Vuyo doesn't see any value of him. What's his name again? Blackadder made another.
Blackadder,
yeah. He made another 20 tackles this past weekend as well. But when I watch the game, those particular, because the thing is, for me, I don't hate on stats, guys. Just so everybody knows, I'm not a hater on stats. But from a
that's a relief.
From an eye test, man, I was looking at Blackadder's tackles versus Papali'i's tackles in that game, and I think Papali'i makes a bit of an impact in the tackle count, because these tackles are shoulder on hip or shoulder on chest, whereas a Blackadder tends to kind of smother players, because I mean, it's either you want a dominant hit or you have a passive hit. So Blackadder, I don't know, and I'm not hating on the 20 counts, but for me, those 50% of those 20 tackles were not really impactful tackles. Either sometimes is a secondary tackler. You get your primary tackler, the guy who's actually trying to bring the person down or stops the person's momentum, and then you'll get your secondary tackler who comes and assists, basically. So, yeah, I'm trying to wrap my head around this, but finding it difficult. But anyway, Hugh, go on before I go on a ramble.
Well, the stats are saying that Blackadder made 2 dominant hits of his 20, but it's saying that Papalili didn't make any. Now, I defer to people who know a bit more about rugby than I do, but I felt like Blackadder was getting a lot of the stick that Papalili should have been getting last week. I kind of like, yes, maybe they're not that dominant, but I don't know. I feel like if a guy's putting up those numbers, 20 tackles in 2 games back to back, especially 20 tackles in a game where the All Blacks dominated the ball, I kind of don't hate it. So I know a lot of people don't rate Blackadder. From a stats point of view, he's putting up the numbers now. That's not everything, but I'm not Blackadder out at the moment. In terms of, but what you said originally is the eye test. I think for me, from the moment of the hacker, I knew that the stats aren't going to tell the story of this game. Firstly, it was raining again, but secondly, the hacker had a level of venom to it that I really haven't seen it have in a long time. And I've seen kind of guys doing the hacker recently kind of looked like they were a bit awkward doing it, not giving it everything. Whereas that front row they had doing the hacker yesterday, those 5 guys who were stood there, they were like, no, I am going to kill you. It is my intent to kill you in this game. So I kind of knew from there that it was going to be a different thing. And we talked about DNA on this podcast before, and it felt like in this game the All Blacks just went back to their DNA. So it comes back to the question that you asked, Jade, is when is this going to be repeatable? Do they have to have that level of hurt to perform at that emotional level, particularly against Argentina? It was like the emotional energy switched. I have to say that Argentina, we kind of joked about it on the pod last week, saying like they've got what they wanted from this rugby championship. They've got their big result and they're going to go on holiday for the rest of the championship. Kind of came a bit true in this game. But you talk about the energy and the aggression that the All Blacks brought in. I think their post-contact meters per carry, which is not a perfect stat. It can be skewed, but went something up like 40% better in this game compared to last week, and dominant tackles went from 10 to 20 in this game. So twice as many dominant tackles in this game. Again, bearing in mind how many total tackles they made, which wasn't many. The kind of stats and the analysis and the tactics and things go out the window for this game a little bit for me, because it was just pure emotion. It was pure passion, which isn't very scientific analysis, but that was the vibe that I got from this game right from minute one, was that the All Blacks were playing pissed off and Argentinians were playing like people who did really well last week. So it was fine. So not a lot of learning from this game, to be honest, other than this is still an All Blacks team. So the question is, which is what you asked, Jade, is can they do this every week? And at the moment, I'm not sure.
Don't cry for me, Utlantina. Vickers, your view.
Yeah, I actually agree with Hugh's statement there. And the last one is that there was another team that was playing like they were hurt, and there was another team that they got their win for the week, for the campaign. I think, look, for me, noticeably, tactics change, which is, if I'm Rassie Erasmus, I'm smiling all the way to the bank. It's the kickoff change. If Perenara is starting at 9, then you kick off to the left. They don't clear off Perenara, they clear off 10, which is David McKenzie, and all his clearance yesterday, exit plays were poor. Everything before the 10 meter. Obviously, when we take it to Highveld, we're probably going to push it maybe towards a halfway line or halfway. But anyway, like the most important thing is that kickoff from Argentina this week put me in a different perspective in terms of how uncomfortable New Zealand are when Perenara is starting at 9. I would have rather changed to make it Jordy Barrett kicking. I would have rather preferred him clearing off those kicks if Perenara obviously not in there comfortable. But again, it's all tactics. It's just about tactics, how do you use them. And I think Argentina used that kickoff tactic quite well this week. And again, goes to show New Zealand exiting were very poor. Jade mentioned some lineouts. I think the lineouts as well, they were a little bit shaky towards the start of the game. I would have thought that they would have tried to fix that, but they were a little bit shaky. I wasn't happy with. I think it was the first four, and especially though the three that I'm talking about were in the Argentinian half. So it's just a matter of. I mean, all the guys have said, Jade and Hugh have said it. It just for me tactically, I think Argentina changed the tactics quite well, but didn't do the game. They forgot about the game. They forgot to play rugby. They focused too much on other things, and yeah, we saw a couple of cross kicks from both teams as well. I think also for me, it's one of those things, man, where New Zealand were doing the chip over the rush defense, chip over, and so I think Ardy caught one. I'm not sure who caught the other one. I think we scored the other one. So quite like you can see that there is some sort of trying to break down that defense, but still not accurate enough. And I mean, again, going back to the Highveld, I think going back to the Highveld, New Zealand will have to start thinking how, if Perinara is their 9, they need to think if South Africa kicks to the right, to their right, and South Africa left, then how will they exit? Because as I said, if you kick before your 10 meter, you get the ball out and you're giving South Africa a line out, they're gonna maul you. And it's on the high felt, and they're gonna maul you. And you know that you're gonna get tired, and you know that's gonna be draining. So I would probably start using Jordy Barrett as a obviously clearing out kicker, or making Mackenzie the scrum off on that exit, and then putting Perinara on one side, Jordy Barrett on one side, to have two options to clear. Yeah, that's just me on the game. Other than that, the game was just the rain obviously didn't help as well, but you could see New Zealand were up for it, that especially that first 30 to 35 minutes.
Anyway, fair enough. Pound for pound, first test, Ellis Park. Who do you see winning Ellis Park? Emirates, what's this thing called? Emirates Airline Park, Vickers.
I'm going for South Africa at this point.
Why?
No, currently, because if you look at both teams, I think South Africa is more settled. I think you can't make 10 changes in a team and still look comfortable. And we've seen this from Rassie. I think for me, like I say, at this point, I don't see Sasha being taken out of the starting lineup. I think Sasha will start the game against New Zealand, but definitely Pollard will be on the bench. We'll probably go back to Dialende. We'll probably go Jesse Creel, Kurt Liar, and say if Vili's out, and then I think they'll probably go for Fassi because he didn't look too badly. But looking at the forwards, we have no injuries in the forwards, and we have everyone fully fit, and we had Kitsoff playing this weekend. He's got 2 more weekends to recover. He can definitely be part of the squad if you want him to be, and you might have just Visa back. So I think at this point, for me, looking at the two teams who've had full 100% selection, I think you would have to go with South Africa in Johannesburg for that one.
Fair enough. Yeah, rugby is not played on paper; it's played on the rugby field, Chief. Anyway, Hugh, who do you see winning the first test?
Oh, I completely agree with you. I think the Boks are far more settled. You have to remember as well that they took a lot of their first liners out of this game. So there's a good contingent of the Springboks team who've been thinking about the All Blacks for a week longer than the All Blacks have been thinking about them. I can't see it being a blowout, though. I think it will still be close. I think with rivalries like this, it's always close, and it's almost one of those form goes out of the window rivalries. But I think the Boks are definitely favourites. Being at home kind of decides that as well. Anyway, I think the Boks have got the physicality to get the upper hand on the All Blacks, and I think they're more settled in their game plan. They know what they want to do. They've got a better bench. And yeah, they've got the advantages for me. They've definitely got the advantages. Also, I just want to shout out one player who it's not like interesting or new news, but Peter Steph-Tutoy is in the form of his life at the moment. Absolutely incredible. He obviously heard the talk about the GOAT over the last few years, a few weeks rather, and was like, let's maybe I've got something to say about that. So early front runner for World Player of the Year for me. Peter Steph-Tutoy, and I think, there's some All Black wingers who aren't looking forward to seeing him run in their channels.
The Springboks golden generation, Jade. We heard about the French golden generation. They came up short in their own backyard. The Springbok golden generation has a chance to go 2-0 against the All Blacks. Hasn't happened in a very, very long time. It can happen under Razor. 2 weeks' time at Ellis Park. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, look, they've got a big chance of winning the Freedom Cup for the first time since 2009, 10, or whenever. But yeah, I mean, they've got a very big, good chance. And I mean, they're favorites in terms of the balance, in terms of their squad and the selection, and, you know, the continuity and the feel-good space where they are at the moment. But like you said, for this game, form goes out of the window. I honestly, if I was Razor Robinson, I mean, there's a few, you know, concerns regarding injuries, especially with Barry Tuapolotu and Barrett. If they are back, Australia, I mean, New Zealand has two more big ball carriers. I might even think of moving a guy like Tupovai to 6 and just taking the Boks to the lineout. You know, just trying your luck, playing territory, trying your luck, taking them to the lineout, especially at the high field where you're going to have to, you know, save your energy. I mean, we've seen it in Barry before. So let's see what they do. Let's see how the selection goes. But at the moment, obviously, you can't look past that the Boks are favourite for this. But all I'm saying is, you know, this test form goes out of the window. It's going to be close to call. We might just see the Boks win at Ellis Park, and then the next week in Cape Town, when New Zealand play at home, they will win at the second test.
Oh, fantastic. Any last thoughts, gentlemen, that you want to share before we close it off? Vickers, Hugh, Jade?
Yeah, just for me, I think if I was New Zealand at the moment, I'd definitely be flying to South Africa early as possible, just to get that, obviously get to settle in Johannesburg and get your acclimatization and make my trainings blistering quick. All intensity trainings, nothing else.
Yeah, I think they're flying either Wednesday or Thursday.
Flying Wednesday.
Yeah. Final thoughts.
They land Wednesday, right? Because you go back in time if you go that way.
Yeah, I don't know. Razor spoke about finalizing the injury list by Wednesday, so I'm assuming Thursday they fly out New Zealand time, obviously, and then they'll probably land in South Africa on Thursday. Leave New Zealand on Thursday, get into South Africa on Thursday. Does that make sense?
Yeah, probably that's the one.
Something along those lines. Jade?
No final comments from me. I mean, I think we had good rugby this weekend. Like I said, it's quiet in Bloemfontein. Unfortunately, you know, Grey, not the number one school in South Africa this year, so it's a little bit been quiet in Bloem. Everybody's moping around, you know, mourning and everything in Bloem. But yeah, looking forward to seeing what Razor does. If there is questions or concerns in terms of injuries, we guys call up. And we're looking forward to the build-up, you know, for the old rivalry, the biggest two rugby nations in the world coming against each other in 2 weeks.
Yeah. No, fantastic. I'll tell you who is number one. It's the Rugby Scoop Podcast. Guys, thank you very much for joining in. Thank you, Vuyo. Thank you, Hugh. Thank you, Jade. Thank you to all the listeners. Thank you for the contributions and the comments on the timeline as well. We'll see you guys next week. Same time, same place. The big one at Ellis Park. Remembering 1995. See you guys next week. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers all.
See you in 2 weeks. Ciao.